Hello, everybody. We got a question right off from the top from ACAC. He says, any tips on getting the most clarity of sound? And also, can you explain overtones in trumpet sound and how I can get them? Okay, so that's 2 questions. So we'll go ahead and start right with that. But before I do, I want to say howdy to Raimo and Javier. Nice to see you guys. And hello, ACAC. Haven't seen you in a while. All right, so clarity of sound. So clarity meaning clear, I'm assuming, right? So, you know, a lot of these words that we use to describe trumpet sound and stuff like that mean different things to different people, right? So part of that depends on who it is that's saying clarity, right? So, you know, I know what your background is, ACAC, and so just so you guys know, ACAC is recently changing from tuba, I think it was, to trumpet, and making great progress from what I can tell. And he took a couple lessons, and so that's how I know about him. And so clarity of sound could mean a bunch of different things. I'm going to tell you what it means to me. I'm not really that much concerned with clarity of sound. I like to teach it the way that my teacher in El Paso taught it. He used to teach in terms of percentage, right? If you have 90% sound coming out of the horn and 10% air, that's a pretty good sound, right? But if you have like 50% sound coming out and 50% air, then that's pretty much a fuzzy, airy sound, right? That's not a clear sound. So for me, how do you get a clear sound? Clarity of sound comes from fatigue. Well, a clear sound, you lose your clear sound when you get tired. So, for example, if someone's been practicing too much, they're going to tend to have a less clear sound. Now, there are ways to practice a lot and have a very clear sound. But in order to do that, you have to have strength so that you don't get tired. So, clarity of sound, what do I recommend for clarity sound? Go to my video that talks about the 3 levels of rest. And then the other video that I have that might help you with this is the strength formula video. So if you put my name, 3 levels of rest, that one video will come up, and then my name and the strength formula, that will help also. I hope that makes sense. So now let's talk about the issue of the question, not issue, what am I saying? Let's answer the question, what are harmonics? Oh, by this, I think you used the word overtone. let me share screen on this one. So here we go. Transition. Let me see here. Okay, here we go. All right, so for every note, well, first, before I answer your question, let me say this first. Everybody has overtones in their sound, okay? That's another one of those myths that people teach. There's no such thing as anyone that doesn't have overtones in their sound. There's no such thing. It doesn't happen. What we want to do is have a better balance of overtones. Okay, so for example, someone who has a very nasal sound is going to have emphasis on the higher overtones. Okay, and someone who has a muddy, dull sound is going to have an emphasis on the lower overtones. But you don't ever have trumpet sound that doesn't have overtones in it. That's just not mathematically possible. Okay, so let's look at let's look at a chart here where this axis is frequency, right? Higher frequency, lower frequency, and this axis over here is oh, what am I doing? There's no axis. So let's say this is the note, the fundamental note, right? I don't know what I was saying. All right, so the fundamental note is, we're going to say that's C, okay? The next note up in the overtones is actually an octave higher, right? Because, okay, so we can discover the overtones or the harmonics by discovering the trumpet itself. So let's, instead of saying that this is that C, let's say it's this C down here, which the trumpet doesn't like, right? The trumpet rejects that note. If I was playing flugelhorn, we could do that. In fact, let me get the flugelhorn real quick. You know, they purposefully design the trumpet so that it can't play that note. And the reason they do that is because there's benefits in the other notes having it like that. So, all right, so we're going to get that fundamental. Right? See how different that is on the flugelhorn? So that's that C. Now the next note up is the note an octave higher than that, right? So that's the next C up. And then the next note up is that note there, which is G. And the next note up is this note here, which is C. And the next note up is this one here, which is E. Then we have the next one up. Notice the pattern. That's why I'm doing this, which is G again. Then we have this one that everyone likes to pretend isn't there. That's the most bizarre thing to me. And I recently had people talking about this. I don't know if it was on this Q and A or not. It might have been. So this is the B flat, the forbidden B flat. And nobody wants to talk about it. Okay? But it's there. Okay, then the next one is C. Oh, let's not do it like that. Let's see here. All right, the next one is C. And that's as far as we need to go, but it does keep going, okay? One of these days I'll find a way to like write without using my mouse. Okay, all right, so now the very exact same harmonics that we have that we're playing that create notes on the trumpet are the same notes that exist. So when you're playing that note, so while you're playing this low C, while you're playing this low C, and let's give this low C a value of 100%, okay? I apologize for the horrible writing. 100%. The next C up is roughly I'm doing that backwards. The next C up is roughly 60% of the bottom C. Now let's make it 66%. Okay? I think that's how that works. My math on this might be a little bit off, but you get the idea, right? So this C is present in your low C as a second note over the top of your note that you're playing, but it's just 60% volume. And this next G up above it is 60% volume of that. And the next C above that. All these notes are present inside of the sound that you make on the trumpet. Okay? So I hope that's making sense. All of these frequencies exist at the same time on every note that you play. Now, where it gets messed up is when by doing something artificial on your instrument, these upper harmonics will be amplified and the bottom harmonics will be dulled. And that's when you get this nasal, tinny sound, right? Or vice versa. You might have a sound that emphasizes these lower harmonics, and then you get and diminishes these upper harmonics, and you'll have a what do you call it? A dull, dead sound. What we want is equal, and when we say equal, it's not really equal. Remember that as you go higher, those harmonics get softer. Okay, I hope I'm making this clear. So what do you do? So that's answering the question, what is it? Okay, that's what overtones are. Okay, let me switch back here again. That's what the overtones are. All right. Now, how do you get overtones? Well, first thing, remember what I said. You already have overtones. What we're trying to do is get the overtones balanced, okay? But what balance you're shooting for is based on who your sound models are, okay? Sound models. We want sound models. You listen to somebody that you like, and you listen, and you listen, and you listen, and you listen, and you keep listening to that player. For me, when I was younger, it was Maurice Andre, mostly because that's what you could buy, and Miles Davis. Those were my sound models. Later, I found recordings of Freddie Hubbard, which is probably not a good person to get a sound model off of. As far as classical stuff, really, there was nothing in my life. You know, when I was your age, AC, it was in the 80s. We didn't have CDs yet. And it was just hard to get trumpet music, really. So anyway, I hope that explains it. So the only way you can really change that to get a different balance of sound is to saturate your ears with the sound that you're trying to get in your head, in your horn, right? Find somebody that plays the way you want to play and listen to them all the time. All right? All right, so Javier says, hope you all are doing fine in your lives and in this trumpet journey. Yes, I'm doing good. I hope everyone else is too. He has a question. Mutes have different compression and also some have more or less intonation issues. Is there any practice mute with minimum or no resistance? I'm like the last person to ask about practice mutes because I don't actually use them. Okay? When I travel, I just don't practice. And if I do practice, I practice softly. I've practiced many times in hotel rooms and have never been, not once in my whole life, have I ever been told to stop. Because I can practice very softly. But I would much rather not practice if I'm traveling. Now, maybe this would be different if I was traveling a lot, but for the most, I travel maybe 4 to 6 weeks out of each 2 years. Really, if you think about it. I don't travel all that much. I would love to do more, but gotta pay the bills, right? So I'm not really the one to ask about practice mutes. All right, sorry I can't help you with that. George says, what is your concept on a singing tone? Well, when we say singing tone, in my opinion, what we're talking about is something that has not much to do with tone, but more to do with phrasing. So I had a wonderful teacher. You can look him up on YouTube. His name is Francis Orval, Orval. He lived in El Paso for a very short time and was working with me. I won't say that I was his student necessarily because I was in his brass ensemble class, but he was also in the El Paso Symphony when I was in the El Paso Symphony. So you could call him more of a mentor than a teacher in that regard. But he was very keen on singing through the horn. And in fact, in the brass ensemble, we were doing a Tomasi thing, and he was hollering at me and screaming at me, no, that's not it. And he made me put my horn down and made me sing it and told me how terrible my singing was and sing it right. And the whole brass ensemble's watching me, right? And he's chewing me out trying to get me to sing it right. Then once I sang my part correctly, he said, now play it that way. And when I played it that way, he goes, yes, yes. And when that rehearsal was over, he showed me a academic paper that him and some other people did that involved x-rays of the, I think either x-ray or sonogram or something. It might have been too early for sonogram, but they'd studied the vibration of the vocal cords in sympathy with the vibration of the lips on brass players. And they said that the vocal cords actually vibrate at the same frequency as the lips are vibrating. Right? So to me, I can't get past that. So maybe singing tone means something different to somebody else. But if we're going to sing through the instrument, like what Francis Orval taught me, then it has more to do with music than it does to do with mechanics, but in a sort of song and wind way, right? So what happens, I think, when you sing through the horn is that a lot of the mechanics become automated. You don't have to struggle. There's a lot of stuff that becomes natural when you sing through the horn. I hope that's at least close to what you're talking about. Gabriel says hello. Howdy, Gabriel. Nice to see you. All right. Javier says tuba is cool, but it is also such a heavy and massive instrument. Yeah. Talking about the quality of, yeah, purity of sound. So that's what my teacher used to call it, purity of sound. 50% sound, 50% air is, this is Javier saying this, 50% sound to 50% air is like Chet Baker with new teeth. That's correct. That's the kind of thing we're talking about. It's not necessarily bad, but in a classical setting, not desirable. That said, though, my 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 last trumpet teacher encouraged me to not be as the level that you want to take this for. What are we calling it? What am I saying? I forgot what I was talking about. Okay, I got it. I apologize. My last teacher, talking about percentage of sound, he didn't use those terms. That was my previous teacher. He said sometimes the air is there and it's not that big of a deal because the people 5 foot away can't hear it. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. I really do. I don't think it's, and what I mean by that is I don't think it's worth stressing over. If you sound great 5 feet away, but you hear some fuzz 2 feet away, I wouldn't worry about that a whole bunch. All right, I hope I answered your question, George, about the singing tone. The Bill Adam method, I don't know enough about to comment on. I wish I did. I've seen some copies of what some people call a Bill Adam warm up. Now, I have been a spectator in a lot of those people's arguments. And I do know that the so-called Bill Adam method, just like a whole bunch of other people's methods, and it would probably be the same thing with me when I'm gone. I don't think Bill Adams, yeah, Bill Adams did pass away, I guess about 10 years ago. But people will say that Bill Adam didn't teach everybody the same way. So that any so-called method would be something of a compilation of things that were said or done, or that's what I've heard, is that it's not a plug and play type of thing. But other than that, I'm very, very careful about talking about anybody's method but my own, because there's so many zealous people out there that will attack you for even having the audacity to speak about somebody else's method. I've been attacked so many times, and it's all been very stupid, really, if you ask me. But I'd rather avoid sounding like I'm an authority on something, especially if I haven't studied with that person at all. In fact, I've not, I don't have enough experience with Bill Adam at all. I know a lot of great Bill Adam players. I don't know them here in Houston. I don't think there are any in Houston, not that I know of. But online, I have friends that are Bill Adam students that are very good players, very, very good players. Thoughts on mouthpiece buzzing? I think mouthpiece buzzing is one of the least important rudiments that you can do. I think it's good, but like, for example, if I have to shorten my routine, I'll drop the mouthpiece. I'm more interested in the lip buzz than I am in mouthpiece buzz. I think mouthpiece buzzing, that said, so that's just talking about the routine, right? Outside of the routine, there are times when I use mouthpiece buzzing to, on a piece, like say I'm learning a piece of music. I'll use mouthpiece buzz in the context of learning music to, in the context of learning music to help create more accuracy, more facile slurs. There's a lot that I do on the mouthpiece when I'm learning a piece of music to make the music better. But inside of the routine, yes, I still do it. I do it every day almost. But it's not as important as the other exercises. I would have to say that out of all the exercises I use and teach, mouthpiece buzz is probably the least important. Okay? Gabriel says I have bad audio. So I can't hear the audio. So I wouldn't be able to tell you, but it says, looks like George says it's oh, now you say it's fine. Okay. I should read ahead before I start. Anyway, James says, my current playable range is B flat above the staff. I would like to get up to high C. Using your chop series and daily practice, what would be a realistic time frame to increase my range a whole tone? So that's the easiest one to do, isn't it? A lot of people hate that that fourth level, right? Because it's got that B flat in it. That I think I mentioned this last week or the week before. It was so hard to decide. I knew that the level had to be, there had to be a level between G and C, but where do you put that? A is way too close to G. B flat is, so that one should take less time than any of the others. I'm saying a month at the most, especially knowing that you all have been on that level for a while now, haven't you? If I'm not mistaken, I think you've been on the B flat one for at least a month or a few weeks at least. So, let me tell you what I'm looking for. When we're looking to move on to the next level, we're looking for evidence that your strength goes past that B flat. So for example, one of the places where I'll be looking for that is when you're doing the lip slurs, right? Because the lip slurs get crazier and crazier as you progress through them. When you're doing the lip slurs and you slur up to the B flat from the low B flat, the time when we start saying, hey, maybe it's time to move on is when and it's kind of bad to say this because then with the students, it's kind of bad to tell the students that this is what I'm looking for because then they might do it on purpose, right? We don't want to do it on purpose. But if you go for that slur from B flat to B flat and something accidentally comes out much higher, that's an indication that your strength is beyond where you are right now. So cracked notes, you want to pay attention to your cracked notes. Are they cracking up? That's an indication. Also, another indication is, can you get through the whole routine without being tired? Now, tired and fatigue is relative to each person, right? So sometimes people will say, yeah, Mr. Lewis, I'm still waiting because I still get tired on the routine. And then I'll have them do it for me, and I'm like, you call that tired? Tired to me is when you're really pushing it. And you can barely hold the note, right? The note starts quivering, right? You're so tired, the note starts, oh, You know, or maybe not quivering, but like that starts sagging, right? Starts to get flat because you just can't hold it up in the pitch, right? So, but does that make sense? Uh, that's the kind of thing we're looking for as a symptom of whether it's time to move on to that next level or not. Okay? But in terms of how long that should take, um, from B flat to C should not take all that long, in my opinion. Um, George asks, any air exercises? Now, when people ask about air exercises, I'm very careful to clarify that I don't teach breathing exercises. I only teach air exercises. And the air exercise should be the first thing that you do. Lately, for me, I've just been blowing in the mouthpiece backwards. Okay, so I'll take the mouthpiece, take a nice breath. Not that mouthpiece. Let me. I had never done that before. Let me use this one. That one was so open, I like ran out of air within the first 2 seconds. I want to push hard enough that I can feel the air pushing back. Okay, so that's what I do today. I have in my physical trumpet pyramid book, I think I wrote out 4 or 5 air exercises. Now, the difference between an air exercise and a breathing exercise, breathing focuses on the inhale. I believe that if you focus on the inhale, you're going to get it wrong. Air exercises focus on the exhale. And we want to make that exhale a solid, steady, smooth airstream. Because that's what we're going to try to apply on the routine. Right? So you're not going to hear, I hope you can hear this on the microphone. Hear how it's like fading in and out and stuff like that? We don't want that. We want a airstream that's, basically we're going to go by sound. It's going to have the same sound all the way through. Right? Nothing changing in that. I don't normally use that mouthpiece either. So, sometimes I can embarrass myself on these Q and A's. Anyway, so that's what I do. I also in the old days I used to make a square of paper. Let's see if I can get a piece of paper here and make a square out of it. And this is good. I mean, it's not that this is a bad thing. I don't think this is the kind of thing you would do every once in a while, or maybe in the beginning just to like learn how to control it. I take a piece of paper, I put it in an L shape, I put it on a music stand. Put it on the music stand, and I try to see how far I can back up and still blow it off. So I'll back up, back up, back up, back up. Okay, so the idea is to see what you're doing there is you're learning how to focus your air, because if your air is spread out, or if you're not aiming it in the right direction, it's not going to have any strength to push the paper. There's another air exercise that I don't know how I feel about this anymore. I used to do it in the 80s. You take another square piece of paper, you put it on the wall, and this one's really about, I think this one's really about breathing. But it's a great way to work on the breathing without focusing on the breathing, right? So you put the paper on the wall, blow it, and try to breathe fast enough so that you can start blowing again before the paper comes down. It's not easy. You have to take a very quick breath, because if you don't take a quick breath, that paper will fall. So I think all of those are pretty cool exercises, but the one I do today is just blowing through the mouthpiece. So anyway, practicing through the lead pipe or taking out the tuning pipe. Yeah, I don't do that. I think if I had learned about it earlier in my development, I probably would do it today. That's something that I didn't. I know that Bill Adam does that. That his approach has that in it. I didn't learn it from hearing about Bill Adams students. I learned that. I took one lesson with Armando Guitarra, and he's the one that showed me the lead pipe. Now, I think the way Guitarra taught the lead pipe was different from what Adam teaches. I think they're two different things. But for me personally, I don't see a need for it. And I don't teach it to my students either. I don't have a problem with it. And if a student comes to me and says, I've been doing that, I'm not going to tell them, no, you shouldn't do that. I think there's benefit in it. But I have my system now, and I can't find a way to make that fit with my system. I hope that makes sense. All right, so James says he's been on Chops Apprentice for 6 weeks and have gone from A flat to B flat. All right. I can play up to double D, but not when playing music. I see. Well, if you can play up to D, I think you're probably ready to go on to C. Comeback journey. This is still James. Comeback journey has been a humbling one. As I used to have a range of double F in high school and played first chair. Yeah, you know what? The comeback thing has a lot of psychological stuff involved, right? I really think that the hardest part of doing the comeback thing is navigating those emotional things, that the emotional pits. What do they call those? Dead drops. There's an emotional dead drops along the way that can, and I'm telling you, those I call it a dead drop because it can kill you. I don't mean you personally. I mean it can kill your music efforts. And so yes, there's so much with the comeback players that is mental. There's so much of it that's psychological that we have to, and that's one of the reasons why I came up with this wholesome musical priorities. Every time I talk about wholesome musical priorities, so with my screen here, I can see how many people are watching, right? And I start talking about wholesome musical priorities, and it goes 15, 14, 13, 10, 9. people, I don't know what it is. When you start talking about wholesome stuff, people are like, I don't want to watch that. but the wholesome musical priorities help you navigate that emotional stuff that comes with doing the comeback thing. I really believe that. So anyway, I hope that answers your question. Javier says, don't get lip swelling before. Oh, I didn't see the I. I don't get lip swelling anymore with your method. I get embouchure muscle fatigue. That's what we want. Good. Sometimes even on the next day when I really push it, play loud and high, is that okay? So, you know, you just have to be careful. I think what you're asking me is, can you do 2 consecutive days of really hard playing? And, you know, the reason I have that 3-day rotation is to maximize the growth. We want to maximize the growth. Now, 2 days, that if you break the system for a second day, I don't see that as a problem if it's not happening all the time. But you know, each person, you got to take into account each person's schedule, right? So let's say you only have 2 consecutive days that you can do that heavy playing. Well, then it's got to be that way. I hope that makes sense. So I hope that makes sense. So you just have to make sure you're getting some rest. I think sometimes people take that 3-day rotation a little bit too serious. And this is, you know, it becomes dogmatic, right? People start following it like it's some kind of rule, and it's not really a rule, it's a suggestion, right? If you follow that, you're going to have faster growth. But you know, what's more important than that is to understand how the resting thing works. Because that 3-day rotation thing is basically the 3rd level of rest, the day level of rest, right? So I hope that makes sense. So you just have to be smart about it. If you keep hammering away, hammering away, hammering away, hammering away, and never take rest, then you're not going to get the benefit. But if you break from that 3-day schedule, every once in a while, I don't see a problem with that. You have to make this stuff work for your situation. Gabriel says, yes, same to me, Javier. Sometimes I take 2 days of rest after the hard day. So that's the same thing. So you got to work this the way it works for you. So yes, I would say that's okay. And so I would much rather have somebody who's thinking about this than to have someone who just blindly follows what I write in the book without any kind of, without any kind of discernment. And yes, I do get some students like that every once in a while. They follow the book like it's like it's heart surgery or something, brain surgery, you know. So no, it's not like that, you know. It's to get you to see the value of working hard one day and taking it easy the next day. Okay? So, George asked, Chickwood's flow studies with a question mark. Let me tell you about the Chickwood's flow studies. Well, first of all, Chickwood's flow studies is rooted in Herbert L. Clarke, right? Herbert L. Clarke, he even mentioned in the beginning of the book, the old book. I have to call it the old book now because there's a book out there now that's not the same book I have. The book I have is the one that it's not even really a book. This is the stuff that his students would study with him in his lessons. That's what I've got, not the book that was made by his son later, right? So in the book I have, Chickwitz refers to it as moving long tones and attributes the concept of moving long tones to Herbert L. Clarke. Okay? But, so, now, a lot of people, when you say Chickwitz flow studies, they're talking about we're talking about that exercise. But there's a whole book of etudes. They're trumpet etudes. So, you know, that's the flow studies to me. The the exercise is really just a warm-up thing, and I'll tell you about the exercise. So to me, I see these as two different things, right? The exercise, the da 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 da, that's the foundation for my book. So when I put the book together, I didn't want to have any copyright issues. So I rewrote the Chickwits so that I wouldn't have any copyright issues. I later found out that there wouldn't have been copyright issues, but hey, right? So my long tones are all based on the Chickwits exercise. But there's more to it than that. I wrote my own flow study book, and it's based on Chickwits. The routine has a lot of flow study characteristics built into it, especially in the flow tonalization studies. So yes, I'm a big fan of the Chickwits flow studies. The Chickwits stuff is what I was doing before I wrote my own books. Clark is a good book. Arvin's is a good book. Schlossberg is a good book. I think every serious student should have all those books. Gabriel says, sorry to ask again, but I still have an issue with on the lift slurs at the end of variation 1 of Carnival of Venice, jumping from E to G. Any other advice? Oh man, so remind me, what exactly is the problem? Are you just having trouble getting to the G? So I think I remember that. George asked about Walter Smith top tones. I have like 3 copies. One of them is so worn out that we use it for we use it for what do you call that? Oh, what's it called? You know, when arts and crafts stuff, right? So, I mean, it's got pages missing and torn and all that stuff. I was doing top tones in high school. Javier says, what is the minimum equipment someone should record for trumpet? Mike? Mike, so, you know, for nowadays, I think you can get away with a cheap mic and Audacity and just a regular computer. I think so, and what you're asking is minimum. So I think that's good. I think, you know, I don't have a lot of very fancy equipment. We just recently bought a mic specifically for speaking. But aside from that, the last mic I bought was in 2012. Yeah, I think it's 2012. I'm still using the same mic all these years. I can show you which one I've got. This is an AKG. It's even broken, by the way, and I haven't fixed it. AKG C1000S. That's what I'm using for my trumpet stuff. So yeah, I'm on. I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm on very cheap equipment. Very cheap equipment. I think I have less than $500 worth of equipment for recording. Now I got the microphone secondhand. and that helps a lot. It's a $300 microphone, but I didn't pay $300 for it. So Gabriel says that he says try Go with the Flow by Mr. Lewis. It's a fantastic book. It helped me a lot. Thank you so much, Gabriel. Yeah, that's a nice book. I think I told you before that I I didn't like it when I first finished it, and in fact I put it away for at least a year. I didn't even look at it again. Okay, so, but yes, after I came back to it, it was very nice. Anyway, James says, any recommendation as to, I think I missed something. Oh, George says Arnold Jacobs method. So I'm not sure, George, what you want me to say here. Are you asking me if these are good methods or not? I'm not going to say any of them are bad, right? I think there's a lot of similarities between what I teach, a lot of similarities between what I teach and Arnold Jacobs. There's a lot of similarities, okay? James says, any recommendation as to what fundamentals to work on for improvisation? What chords, keys do you feel are most important to prioritize? I think the most important thing is to not prioritize, okay? That's why I use a sheet. Let me pull this up and see if I can make this work. Okay, I've got a PDF thing. I think I can show you with a PDF. Let me look real quick. The problem with all, I put out a lot of stuff, and sometimes I forget what I named it. Even though I use it all the time, I can't remember what it is. So I'm terrible at names, even with the stuff that I named. If I named it, it doesn't help much. Okay? I still forget. Oh, that's not what I'm looking for. Let's try something else. Arpeggio Grid, I think I called it. Ay, ay, ay. Okay, here it is. I'm going to pull this up and let you see it. How do I do that though? I'll go here. Okay, here we go. I can do that. Okay, check this out. These are let me zoom out so you can see the whole thing. All right, so you practice one arpeggio. Okay, so like here, I don't know where I got this from. It was probably in some student's folder, right? So the reason I do it this way is you can do the ones that are for you, the song you're working on now. These are triads up here. These are 7 chords. And then it's major, minor, diminished, augmented, suspended, major 7, minor 7, dominant 7, half diminished, full diminished, suspended 7. Okay? These are the ones I have my students do. These are the ones I do. Obviously, there's some that we don't do because, like the augmented, we're not going to do C augmented and E augmented. That's the same chord. So really, these ones here should have X's on them so you don't accidentally over practice. Okay? But yes, we only do 1 arpeggio per day, and we put When you do it that day, you put the date in. Now, the reason I use a grid instead of using an order is so that you can practice the ones you need to practice now for whatever purpose that you have. Put the date on that chord, and then on other days, you just go to the other ones that you want to go to. Now, let me tell you this also. When you're doing the arpeggio, you should be looking at the chord symbol, not at the exercise. So, like the first arpeggio exercise I have my students doing is the expansion one. So they're going to be looking at the C chord, and then they're going to sing back and forth, right? Da, da, da. Da, da, da. They're going to be doing that as they're staring. And I tell them, stare so hard at the chord symbol that if your eyes were laser beams, you'd burn a hole right through it, right? We want to really concentrate on the vision of that chord symbol so that we associate those notes and that sound with that chord symbol. I hope that makes sense. So, but the reason I brought that chart up is so that you would see that there is no prioritization. Everything, all of them should get the same effort all the way across. Okay? All right, so okay, so Gabriel says as he goes faster, the lip stops on the E. The lip stops on the E. E to G. Wow. Have you tried putting an accent on the E? Let me see. I'll be right back. Look, just. All right, let's take a look here. Where is it? $339. There it is. Okay. So are you tonguing the E? That's the first thing I would ask you is, are you? I don't think you're talking about the variation. Is this the Arbin one that you're doing? I would say to make sure that you accent it and make sure you're tonguing it, because if you're trying to slur to it, that's going to be a problem, okay? And if you accent the E instead of, and don't accent the G, that should make that all work out better. Javier asks, oh, so George says, Caruso, Maggio. So Caruso is also another one that I think there's a lot that I've taken from that. And Maggio, so I don't have as much to say about Maggio. I understand Maggio. I think, well, I'm not going to say that because people get bent out of shape. I'm not going to say anything about Maggio. Okay, we'll leave Maggio alone. Javier asks if it's a condenser mic. Yes, it's a condenser. Raimo says, I am using AKG 1000S to recording and Apple iPad with GarageBand. That's very close to what I'm doing. Very similar. And use condenser mic, not dynamic for trumpet recording. That's right. Mary was here. So, well, I guess I missed Mary. Sorry. Okay. George says, best way to practice jazz transcriptions. Best way to practice jazz transcriptions is to do them yourself. Right? I only use, with the exception of, there are some exceptions, I might sometimes use a transcription book for sight reading purposes, but I only use transcription books for analysis. I love using transcription books for analysis because you can see, I know there's mistakes in them, but that's fine. At least you get an idea of what the guys are doing. George asks now, best way to practice orchestral excerpts? I would say with the recordings. I took one lesson from Jeff Kernow when he was principal trumpet of Dallas Symphony. And I went up there to take the lesson, and he was practicing when I got there, and he had his chair set up with two tables right here and speakers facing him left and right, and then his music stand, and he would play along with whatever orchestra he wanted to play with the speakers facing this way. So I think that's probably the best way to practice excerpts. James says, thanks, Eddie. That chart is just what I needed. I will go back and copy that. Well, send me your email and I'll just send you a copy of the PDF. You don't have to like reinvent the wheel here. I'll just send it to you. George says, best approach to playing tunes in all 12 keys, giant step, Stella. Yeah. Best approach to playing tunes in all 12 keys. Yeah, I don't know. Best approach. That's the part I'm having the hard part with. Best approach to playing tunes in all 12 keys. If you don't have the chops in those keys to begin with, I don't know why anybody would do that. So like that chart that I had, that I just showed you guys for the arpeggios, I have a similar chart for that for the scales. And so let me tell you what I do. I practice one key at a time in my jazz stuff. I do everything in one key. And then I go to the next key. And that gives me more strength in that key. I hope that makes sense. So, really, it's not so much working the tunes in those different keys as it is having the chops in those keys. I wouldn't be, and there's so much in our education, music education world that just makes no sense to me like that, right? If you don't, just like the trying to learn changes on a tune, right? Trying to learn changes. You can't even change keys in the right place, right? There's students that can't even like what do you call it? Blue bossa, right? They can't even change to the key of E flat on that 9th bar. How are they going to play different chords every measure or every 2 beats? That makes no sense to me. And yet that's what they try to teach the kids. So you're trying to use skills you don't even have yet. That's frustrating to me. It really is. All right. So, Gabriel says, if I tongue, I do it. What do you mean? So, are you telling me that if you tongue the E, right? So, I've got the book out. So, I can see how it would be confusing, right? Because on my copy, it almost looks like that slur from the E to the G is going to the C. It's not going to the C. Okay? That slur does not go to the C. I hope that's what you're talking about, because that should fix your problem, I hope. If that's not what you're talking about, just clarify and I'll try to answer better. Oh, here's your email. That's James's email. So Raimo says AKG 1000S is condenser mic. I am also using Rode M3. That's very cool. So let me copy down your email address real quick here. All right, James, I've got your email. Maybe you want to go back and delete it now that I've got it? I would delete it, but I don't know if that gives you penalties through Google or not. Okay? So, George asks, "What's if I have thoughts about practicing doodle tongue?" I think if you want to do doodle tongue, so I've never done it. So, I'm not actually that interested in it. So, I wouldn't be able to tell anybody how to do it. Okay? Gabriel says, in Arvin, it's at the end of the page under the theme at beat 29. Beat 29. At the end of the page under the theme. So I'm assuming you're talking about this. Tell me if I'm right. And I can't see. Let me change view here. Are you talking about this here? Right there, the E right there. If that's what you're talking about. Okay. All right, I'm gonna try to answer a few more of these questions, but it's time for me to go. George says practicing all 12 keys opens the ear. Yes, I agree with you. Very good. Javier says thank you for this Trumpet Q and A. You're welcome. For sharing your knowledge. It has helped me tremendously, not only with trumpet technique, but also with motivation. Very good. I'm glad that helps. Who's my favorite player? I don't have a favorite player. You know, having a favorite player. So to me, your trumpet playing. Oh, you know what? I used to have a snarky answer to that question when people used to ask. They used to say, who's your favorite player? And I would say, you are. And I stopped doing this. Bye, Raimo. I stopped saying stuff like that because I was doing a master class one time and they asked me to introduce myself, and and everybody else was talking about all the famous people that they've played with, and they were trying to obviously impress this group of junior high students. Right? And I'm thinking, you gotta be kidding me, right? So, I mean, I played with a lot of famous people, right? And I've played a lot of famous people, and I don't need anybody to say, "Oh, I'm so wonderful," because I play with. So anyway, I'm up there and I'm telling them who's most important to me. And I pointed at the little junior high kids and I said, "You guys are the most important trumpet players to me right now." Does that make sense? So, so no, I don't have a favorite. I believe that each trumpet player that I listen to is valuable. Whatever they bring to the table, and I'm talking about even my students. Okay, one more question for George. How much time do I spend listening? I'm going to say as much as I can. At least, I'm going to say an average of at least an hour a day, but usually a lot more than that. Okay? So, anyway, very good, guys. Another good Q and A chat. So, all right. Other than that, I'm going to say to you guys, God bless you guys. And we'll see you next time. Nice to see all of you